My unfaithful husband threw me out of our home and refused to let me take even my own clothes. Weeks later, his mistress walked into a party wearing my late mother's most treasured dress. Vanessa's hand came out of my mother's dress holding a folded piece of paper. 40 people watched it happen. Dana's 40th birthday had fairy lights strung over the patio, and a speaker playing something from 2009, and a 3-tier cake nobody had cut yet. And every one of those 40 people had stopped talking about 90 seconds earlier, when the woman in the midnight blue dress walked straight across the flagstones to me, smiling like she had already won, and asked if I recognized what she was wearing. I did. I'd known that dress since I was 9 years old. Tiny pearl buttons at the neckline. A narrow, hidden pocket in the right seam that my mother had sewn in herself because she refused on principle to own a dress without one. Vanessa hadn't known about the pocket. Neither had my husband, who was standing 3 steps behind her with his hands in his pockets and the expression of a man watching a demolition he'd scheduled until that second. Then he said the thing 40 people would be repeating for a year. Vanessa, give me that. She unfolded it instead, and the color left her face like someone had pulled a plug. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been standing on the front porch of my own house with a key that didn't work, telling myself clothes could be replaced. I'd been wrong about a lot of things that spring. I'd been wrong about how far he'd go and how long he'd been going there, and what a woman would sign for a man who promised her a house. But I'd been right about the pocket. Let me back up. My name is Lauren. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of lies, deleted messages, and late nights that never had a reason. I should start earlier than that though, because the thing that saved me wasn't the marriage. It was the job. I'm 41, and for the last 14 years, I've examined title for a living, which is work most people have never heard of, and everyone has depended on at least once. When you buy a house, someone sits in a quiet office and reads every recorded document that has ever touched that piece of dirt, every deed, every lien, every easement, every notice of default, and decides whether you're really getting what you're paying for. That someone is me. I do it for North Valley Title in an office in Roseville with bad carpet and very good coffee, and I'm good at it because it rewards a specific kind of personality: patient, unimpressed, and suspicious of anything that looks too clean. I met Ryan Harlan at a closing 13 years ago. He was the listing agent. I was the examiner who'd flagged a lien his seller swore had been paid. He came to my office to argue about it in person. He was wrong. He was also charming about being wrong, which at 28 I found more interesting than I should have. 12 years, no kids. Ryan wasn't ready, and then he wasn't ready. And somewhere around year 9, I stopped asking. What I got instead was 12 years of a particular kind of weather. A phone that lived face down. Notifications that vanished between the time I saw them light up and the time I picked the phone up. Showings that ran until 11. I told myself what people tell themselves. Commission work is unpredictable. He's a grown man. He's allowed to have a private life inside a marriage. My mother never liked him. She didn't say so. She was a woman who communicated with fabric and food instead of words. So what she did was this. A month before she died, sitting up in bed in the house in Auburn she'd shared with my father for 43 years, she held out a midnight blue dress with tiny pearl buttons at the neckline and smoothed the fabric flat across her knees. She'd worn it to her last anniversary dinner with Dad. She'd worn it to my college graduation. She'd worn it, as far as I could tell, to every occasion in her adult life that she'd decided mattered. Wear this when you need to remember how loved you are. That was all. She didn't say anything about Ryan. She didn't have to. When her estate settled, it came to $112,000, split between me and my sister Jenna, plus the dress, which was mine alone and which I wouldn't have traded for the money. Ryan and I used $85,000 of my half as the down payment on the house on Juniper Court. 4 bedrooms, 2,600 square feet, a backyard Ryan said was perfect for the kids we weren't having. Both our names on the grant deed. His commissions had been good that year, and he made sure everyone knew it. And over time, the story of the house became the story of what Ryan had bought. I let him tell it. It seemed like a small thing to let him have. It was not a small thing. I know that now. There were other things I should have noticed. There always are. Last August, my driver's license went missing. I'd had it at dinner in Granite Bay on a Friday, and on Monday, it wasn't in my wallet. I assumed I'd left it at the restaurant. Ryan was unusually helpful about it. He made the DMV appointment, drove me, sat in a plastic chair for an hour and 20 minutes without complaining once, which for Ryan was like watching a cat sit still in a bathtub. I got a replacement. The number on a California license doesn't change when you replace it. I remember noticing that and thinking nothing of it. That fall, he started getting to the mailbox before me. He'd never cared about mail. Twice I saw envelopes from a credit union I'd never banked with, and twice he said they were junk and put them in the recycling face down. And in December, at the holiday party for Summit Realty Partners, where Ryan hung his license, a woman I'd met maybe twice came up to me at the bar and held the sleeve of my leather jacket between 2 fingers. This is gorgeous. Where did you get it? Her name was Vanessa Sutter. She was Ryan's transaction coordinator, the person who handles the paperwork on his deals, which in real estate means she touches every signature on every file. She was 33, tall, dark-haired, and built a lot like me, which I noticed in the vague way you notice a stranger has your coloring. I told her where I got the jacket. I told her the store and the year. I stood in that hotel bar and gave my husband's mistress directions to my own closet. I found out in January. It wasn't dramatic. His watch was charging on the kitchen counter at 12:50 in the morning, and it lit up with a message preview while I was getting water, still thinking about Monterey. He'd been at a broker's conference in Monterey in November. Alone, he'd said. I logged logged into the hotel rewards account we shared and pulled the folio. 2 adults. Room service for 2. A bottle of something I would never have ordered. That night, he didn't shout either. He cried. He sat at the kitchen table at 1:15 a.m. with a yellow legal pad and wrote me a letter by hand because Ryan believed handwriting was sincerity. The realtor's faith in ink. He dated it at the top because he dated everything. January 14th. It said Vanessa was a mistake. It said it was over. It said, and I remember reading this line twice and deciding it referred to the $9,400 that had quietly gone missing from our savings over the previous year. The thing I'd actually asked him about. Whatever I took from us, I'll put back. Every cent. I swear on your mother. He swore on my mother. I took it as sincerity. I should have taken it as a tell. I read the letter at 1:40 in the morning and I believed about 60% of it, which at the time felt like enough. I did 2 things with it. I photographed every page with my phone because I document things. It's a professional deformity and I've stopped apologizing for it. Then I folded the original and put it in the one place I'd never have to look at it and never have to lose it. The hidden pocket in the right seam of my mother's dress, hanging in a garment bag at the back of our closet. I told myself it was romantic. Her dress, his promise. Wear this when you need to remember how loved you are. It was not romantic. It was evidence. Some part of me knew that even then. It held for 4 months. I won't give you all of it. The late nights came back, and the face-down phone came back. And on a Tuesday in May, I came home from work, sat down across from him at the same kitchen table, and told him. My husband didn't shout when I told him I wanted a divorce. He smiled. If you walk out that door, don't expect to come back. I frowned. What does that mean? It means whatever is inside my house stays in my house. Ryan, most of those things are mine. He shrugged. Then maybe you should think carefully before leaving the husband who paid for everything. I thought he was trying to scare me, so I left. I took my purse, my laptop, and the clothes I was wearing, and I drove to Jenna's house in Rockland, and I slept for 11 hours. 2 days later, I came back for my clothes. My key didn't work. I stood on my own porch at 5:40 on a Thursday afternoon and tried it 3 times, the way you do, as if the lock might change its mind. He'd changed the locks. The Ring doorbell blinked at me. I looked right into it. I called. Nothing. I texted. Nothing. My sister was furious. He can't legally keep your property. I know. Then call someone. I will. But I was too tired to fight. I told myself clothes could be replaced. Furniture could be replaced. I had a job and a sister with a guest room, and the particular relief of a woman who has finally stopped waiting for a phone to light up. I thought I could just be tired for a while. Then I opened social media, and there was Vanessa, his mistress, standing in my kitchen, wearing my leather jacket, grinning next to my husband. Next photo, my summer dress. Next, my sweater, my boots, my earrings. My sister leaned over my shoulder. You have got to be kidding me. Every photo said the same thing. Ryan had replaced me, and the replacement was wearing my life like a costume. 9 posts in 4 days. I saved everyone with the date and the time and the caption into a folder on my laptop labeled Harlan, because it turns out you can't switch off the Examiner even when the parcel is your own life. But the jacket didn't scare me. The boots didn't scare me. One thing in that house could never be replaced. My mother's dress. I told myself even Ryan wouldn't touch it. He knew what it meant. He'd stood beside me at her service. He'd watched me hang it in that closet. I messaged Vanessa anyway. I kept it polite. Whatever happened between Ryan and me is between us. Please stop wearing my clothes. Just box my things up so I can collect them. She replied in seconds. Laughing emojis. Then, they're in Ryan's house now, so I guess they're mine. Think of it as your contribution to his upgrade. Honestly, your clothes look better on me anyway. My hands shook. My sister took the phone. That woman isn't wearing your clothes because she needs them, she said. She's doing it to hurt you. I knew. They weren't clothes to Vanessa. They were trophies. I saved those messages too. The next morning, I logged into our joint checking account at Wells Fargo because I needed to know how long I could live in my sister's guest room before I had to start behaving like an adult. Balance, $212.16, 2 days after I left at 9:03 a.m. While I was in a title meeting, Ryan had transferred $400 to an account in his name only. That part I'd half expected. I scrolled down anyway, the way I scroll a chain of title, because a document never tells you what happened. It tells you what's around it. What was around it was Zelle. Vanessa S., 14 months of it, $400 here, $1,100 there, $2,600 on a Sunday in March with the memo deposit. 23 payments. I put them in a spreadsheet because of course I did, and the total came to $41,150, $41,000, against the $9,400 I'd confronted him about in January. The $9,400 he'd sworn on my mother's name to put back. My stomach did something slow and cold, not because of the amount, because of what it meant about the letter. Whatever I took from us had never been about the savings account. I'd been handed a confession in January, and I'd read it like a greeting card. I tried to fix it the way a reasonable person does. I called Ryan from Jenna's phone since he'd blocked mine, and for the first time in 9 days, he picked up. You're going to need a lawyer, he said. He sounded almost pleasant. I'd recommend you don't waste money on one. You moved $31,000 out of a joint account, Ryan. I moved my money out of an account my wife abandoned. Ask anyone who paid for that house. And he hung up. That was the word that did it. Abandoned. I'd seen it in 100 family law footnotes on the files that crossed my desk, and I knew exactly what it was for. It's what you say when you're building a story for a judge. So I did what I do. I pulled the record. The next morning at 7:15, 8:15, before anyone else was in the office, I sat down at my desk, opened DataTree, and ran a property profile on my own house. I'd never done it. You don't examine your own title any more than a surgeon takes out her own appendix. I typed the address on Juniper Court and watched the list of recorded documents populate. Grant deed, 3 years ago. Deed of trust, first mortgage, 3 years ago. Normal. Then a third line. Deed of trust, recorded October 23rd, document number 2024-08117. Beneficiary, Auburn Ravine Credit Union. Amount, $120,000. I read it twice. Then I pulled the image. A home equity line of credit. $120,000 against the house my mother's money had bought. Page 4, 2 signature lines. Ryan Harlan. And under his, in a tidy, slightly rounded hand that was very nearly mine, the loops on the L right, the cross on the T a fraction too low. Lauren Harlan. I had never seen this document. I had never signed this document. I had never stood in front of a notary for this document. Page 5 was the acknowledgement. On October 19th, before me, Brenda Kowalski, notary public, personally appeared Ryan Harlan and Lauren Harlan, who proved to me on the basis of satisfactory evidence to be the persons whose names are subscribed to the within instrument. Stamp, commission number, expiration date. My hands started shaking and didn't stop for most of the morning. I printed everything. I sat at my desk with the pages in front of me and felt the building fill up around me with people who had no idea. At 8:40, Marcus Delgado came in. Marcus is our chief title officer. He has been examining title for 31 years. He has personally cleared more than 40,000 parcels, and he is the only person in that building I've ever watched read a bad deed and know it was bad before he got to the signature page. I put the packet on his desk without a word. He read all 5 pages. He read the acknowledgement twice. Then he looked up over the top of his glasses. October, he said. Where were you on the 19th? Tahoe, with my sister. I have the photos. And the license? Went missing in August. Replaced it. Same number. Marcus took his glasses off. Lauren, it's a deed of trust. I know. So there's a thumbprint. I knew that too. Every title examiner in California knows it. It's in the government code, section 8206. A notary who takes an acknowledgement on a deed of trust has to take the signer's right thumbprint in her journal. But it was the first moment that morning I'd been able to get my breath all the way down into my chest. A signature can be practiced. A license can be stolen. A thumb is a thumb. Get the line item, Marcus said. Write to her. Cite the section. Send it certified. 30 cents a page, and she has to give it to you. The next 2 weeks were a tutorial in how many doors a system can have, and how many of them can be locked at once. Auburn Ravine Credit Union's fraud department, after 38 minutes on hold, told me that to dispute a signature on a recorded instrument, they'd need a police report and a notarized affidavit of forgery. I asked the woman on the line whether she appreciated the irony of that. She said she'd been told not to comment on irony. The phone number on Brenda Kowalski's stamp was disconnected. I found her current mailing address through the Secretary of State's notary lookup, typed a request that cited section 8206 and named the parties and the month and the document, and mailed it certified on a Wednesday afternoon with my hands not quite steady. Then I went to the police. The desk officer at the Roseville Police Department listened to the first 90 seconds, husband, locks, clothes, and said the words I'd known were coming. Ma'am, that's a civil matter. When I got to the deed of trust, he made a phone call, and 20 minutes later I was sitting across a gray desk from Detective Carla Menendez of the Financial Crimes Unit, 15 years in, reading glasses pushed up into graying hair, with my packet in front of her, and the specific patience of someone who has heard a great many versions of this story. The journal's going to show your license number, she said. Yes, and a signature that looks like yours. Yes, Mrs. Harlan, I want to be straight with you. I've had 3 people this year swear to me they never signed a refinance. 2 of them had. She didn't say it unkindly. Spouses sign things. Things get handed across a kitchen table. People forget. I examine title for a living, I said. I've read something like 11,000 deeds of trust. I have never signed one with Auburn Ravine Credit Union. I was at Lake Tahoe on October 19th, and I'm asking you to take my fingerprints, so that when the line item gets here, we can stop talking about what I remember. She looked at me for a long moment. Get me the line item, she said. Then we'll talk about prints. That same week, I sat in the office of Patricia Okafor, certified family law specialist, 22 years at the bar, who read my binder in 19 minutes flat and then took a slow sip of tea. 3 things, she said. First, he cannot keep your personal property, your clothes, or anything you inherited. That dress is your separate property, and we will itemize it by name and get an order. Second, your mother's $85,000 is a separate property contribution to a community asset. Family Code 2640. You get it back off the top before anything is divided. She tapped the deed of trust. If there's anything left to divide, which brings me to 3. If this lien stands, there may not be. It's forged. Then we prove it, and the lien is void as to your interest. Until then, it's $120,000 recorded against your house, and the lender does not care about your feelings. She slid a sheet across the desk. Retainer is $7,500. I had $212. Jenna put it on a credit card that night and told me to shut up about it. Ryan's attorney's letter arrived 4 days after Patricia had him served. It was 2 pages on heavy paper, and it used the word abandoned 3 times. It also used the phrase Mr. Harlan's separate property about the house on Juniper Court, which meant either his lawyer had never looked at the grant deed, or Ryan was lying to his own counsel. I showed it to Marcus. He said a word I won't repeat. Vanessa posted the next morning. A selfie in the walk-in closet off my bedroom. My side. Half the hangers already empty. Caption, out with the old, and a sparkle. Then, Then, a week before Dana's party, I ran the property profile again. It had become a habit, the way you keep checking a sore tooth with your tongue. A fourth line had appeared. Notice of default. Recorded June 2nd, 9:06 a.m. Auburn Ravine Credit Union. The line of credit was 3 months delinquent. Ryan had drawn it to the ceiling and then stopped paying. A notice of default is the starting bell for a foreclosure. 90 days to a notice of sale. Then an auction, and the house my mother's money had bought would belong to whoever bid highest on a Tuesday. 90 days. I called Patricia. She was quiet for a second. Then we need the lien void before September, she said, which means we need the forgery proven before September, which means we need that journal. The line item came on a Thursday, June 11th. Brenda Kowalski had photocopied it herself and signed the copy. One line, dated October 19th. Document, deed of trust. Signer, Lauren Harlan. Identification, California driver's license. My number, exact. Signature, nearly mine. And in the last box, a right thumbprint in black notary ink, clean and complete, and not a thing I had ever put there. I didn't need a lab to tell me. I'd held a notary commission myself for 6 years before I let it lapse, which is why I know that journal rule, the way I know my own address, and I've looked at my own thumb on paper more times than most people ever will. The center of this one spun the wrong way. Friday morning, I sat at Menendez's gray desk and laid the line item next to my own right thumb, rolled in ink on a card by a patrol officer who'd looked faintly embarrassed about it. I can't tell by looking, Menendez said. Nobody can. It goes to the DOJ latent print unit. How long? 2 weeks if I push. 3 if I don't. I did the math out loud. Notice of default, June 2nd. 2 weeks was the end of June. 3 was July. Patricia's motion to void the lien needed the comparison. The credit union needed the police report. The police report needed the comparison. Every door in the building opened onto a hallway with another door at the end of it. I'll push, Menendez said. I drove back to Jenna's in my Subaru and sat in the driveway for a while without going in. Retainer on my sister's credit card. $200 to my name. A lien on my mother's money. A default on the lien. A detective who was still, I suspected, about 40% sure I'd signed it and forgotten. And a woman in my closet posting my hangers. And Saturday was Dana's 40th. 3 weeks after the messages, our friend Dana turned 40. I'd promised I'd be there. Dana and I had shared a dorm room at Chico State and a bathroom for 4 years after. Ryan had come into that friendship the way he came into everything, by marriage and by being good at golf with her husband Greg. I'd known for a week that Greg had invited him. I hadn't known he'd bring her. You really don't have to go, my sister said from the bathroom doorway. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life hiding because they might walk into a room. Promise me you won't let them destroy your night. I'll try. The party was packed. Fairy lights over the patio, music by the garden, a huge cake next to a tower of gifts. For 1 hour, I was a person again. I ate 2 things wrapped in prosciutto. I let Dana's cousin tell me about his boat. Nobody asked about Ryan, which meant everybody knew. Then the voices near the entrance went quiet. I looked over. Ryan, Vanessa right beside him, smug, almost triumphant. Then I saw what she was wearing. Midnight blue, pearl buttons, my mother's dress. I couldn't breathe. Vanessa saw me. Her smile got wider. She walked straight across the patio, Ryan a few steps behind. Well, she said, I'm surprised you actually came. I said nothing. She ran both hands down the skirt. Recognize this? You know I do. Ryan found it in the closet. He said it was just sitting there wasting away. Ryan shrugged. You always were too sentimental about old junk. That belonged to my mother. Vanessa tilted her head. And now I'm wearing it. The conversations around us stopped. Everyone was listening. Honestly, I think it fits me better. Tears burned behind my eyes. That was what Ryan wanted. He wanted me to break. He wanted everyone to watch. Then my eyes dropped to the right side of the dress, and I remembered. Mom hated dresses without pockets. Years ago, she sewed a narrow hidden one into the right seam, and inside it, unless Ryan had found it, there was still something I'd tucked away months ago, a folded letter, in Ryan's handwriting, written the night he begged me not to leave him. Suddenly, I didn't feel like crying anymore. You know something funny? I said. Vanessa smirked. What? Check the pocket. Her smile flickered. What pocket? The one on the right side. My mother sewed it in herself. She rolled her eyes. This is pathetic. Maybe, but you should still check. She ran her fingers along the seam, found the opening. Her hand disappeared inside. A second later, she pulled out a folded piece of paper. Ryan went rigid, and his voice cut through the whole patio. Vanessa, give me that. She didn't. I've thought about why. I think a woman who has spent 14 months being told what to wear and where to stand and which of his wife's things she was allowed to have had, somewhere in her, one small reflex left over, and it chose that moment. Ryan said, give me that, and her hands opened the paper instead. She read the first line. I watched her lips move on it. I didn't need to see the page. I'd had it memorized since January. Lauren, I know I don't get to ask you for anything. I'm asking anyway. The color went out of her face, all at once, the way it does in cartoons, and I understood that whatever Ryan had told her about the timeline of our marriage, it hadn't included the part where he begged. January, she said. It came out small. She looked up at him. This is dated January 14th. Not here, Ryan said. You told me you filed in October. 40 people heard that. I saw Dana's mouth open. I saw Greg set his beer on the railing very carefully, like it might go off. Vanessa looked back down at the page and kept reading, and I watched her get to the paragraph about herself because I knew exactly where it was, 2/3 of the way down, and I watched her read it twice. Then she read it out loud. Her voice shook, but she got all the way through it. Vanessa is nothing. She's a mistake I kept making because she was easy and I was a coward. It's over. I'll end it tonight. Whatever I took from us, I'll put back. Every cent. I swear on your mother. She stopped there. She looked down at the midnight blue, at the pearl buttons, at the dress of the woman he'd sworn on. Vanessa, Ryan said again, quieter. You swore on her mother. She said it to him, but she was looking at me. You put me in her dress, and you swore on her mother. Nobody on that patio moved. She folded the letter along the creases it already had. She walked to the gift table and set it down on top of a box with a silver bow, like it was one more present for Dana. And then she walked out through the side gate in my mother's dress without looking at either of us. Ryan stood there. He looked at the letter. He looked at 40 faces. He looked at me, and for the first time in 12 years, I saw what he looked like when he couldn't think of the thing to say. I think you should go, man, Greg said. He went. I picked up the letter. Dana came and stood next to me, close enough that I could feel the warmth off her shoulder and didn't say anything, which is what a best friend is for. I held it together until Jenna's car. Then I was sick on the passenger side floor mat, and then I cried in a way I hadn't since my mother's last week, and my sister drove with one hand and didn't say a word. I didn't let them destroy my night, I said eventually, somewhere on Douglas Boulevard. No, Jenna said, you really didn't. I'd like to tell you the letter was a plan. It wasn't. It was a thing I'd done in January because I was sentimental, and a thing I'd remembered on a patio because I was desperate. But it did two things I couldn't have planned. The first was legal. Patricia read the photograph Sunday morning and called me before 9. Whatever I took from us, I'll put back, she said. Dated January 14th, 3 months after the line of credit recorded, in his own handwriting, signed, addressed to his wife. I could hear her smiling. Lauren, that's an admission against interest. That's Exhibit C. The second was Vanessa. Detective Menendez called me Tuesday afternoon. Ms. Sutter came in this morning, she said, with counsel. I sat down on Jenna's kitchen floor. She's got a story. Her story is that Mr. Harlan told her last fall that you'd agreed to the line of credit and agreed to the divorce and were refusing to come sign out of spite, that he needed the money for the house she was going to live in, that he gave her your license and a copy of the escrow file from your purchase so she could practice the signature, and that he booked a mobile notary to come to his office after hours. A pause. She says it was his idea. She says she didn't know what the thumbprint was for. Do you believe her? I believe she sat in front of a notary holding your driver's license and signed your name on a deed of trust, Menendez said. The rest is for the DA. But I'll tell you what I told her. The comparison comes back from DOJ next week, and she had a DUI in 2019, which means her prints are already on file. So it didn't much matter what she said. She just got to say it first. The comparison came back on June 23rd. The thumbprint in Brenda Kowalski's journal was not mine. On July 1st, the DOJ matched it to Vanessa Marie Sutter. Brenda Kowalski turned out to be a 61-year-old mobile notary with 9 years on her commission and 1,100 signings in her journals, and she had done everything the law asked of her. She'd checked the license. She'd taken the print. Menendez told me later that Brenda cried on the phone, not because she'd been fooled, but because it was the first time anyone had ever asked to see one of those thumbprints, and it had worked. Ryan Harlan was arrested at 10:20 on a Thursday morning at the Summit Realty Partners office on Eureka Road, in front of the same receptionist who'd watched him walk Vanessa and a notary into a conference room after hours the previous October. Forgery, identity theft, filing a false or forged instrument, Penal Code 115, a felony in California, and the exact thing title examiners are taught to catch in their first month on the job. Vanessa surrendered the same afternoon with her attorney. Summit terminated him before he made bail. The Department of Real Estate suspended his license pending the case, and after the plea, revoked it. The Sacramento Bee gave it 4 paragraphs on page 2 of the local section. Roseville real estate agent charged in forged home equity scheme. They did not describe him as the husband who paid for everything. Patricia's motion went in on July 9th. Exhibit A, an itemized inventory of my personal property, 53 lines, the first of which read, 1 midnight blue dress, pearl buttons, inherited from petitioner's mother. Exhibit B, the deed of trust. Exhibit C, the letter. Exhibit D, the Zelle records, 23 payments, $4,150. The order came back in 11 days, return of all listed property, civil standby, and a finding that Mr. A. Harlan had breached his fiduciary duty to the community under Family Code 1101, with every dollar he'd sent Vanessa to be charged against his share. The standby was a Tuesday at 10 in the morning. A patrol officer named Tran stood in the foyer of the house on Juniper Court with his thumbs in his vest while Ryan's attorney unlocked the door and stepped aside. Not Ryan. Ryan was in a conference room somewhere being advised to say as little as possible. Vanessa had moved out the week after the party. She'd taken my leather jacket. She'd taken the boots. The earrings were gone, and I've decided to let them be gone. The dress was on the floor of the closet, my side in the corner, where she'd stepped out of it the night of the party and left it. Not hung up, not folded. Just left, the way you leave something that has stopped being worth anything to you. I picked it up. I checked the pocket, out of reflex. It was empty, of course. The letter was in a folder in Patricia's office with a sticker on it, but I stood in that closet with my hand in my mother's pocket for a while anyway, and Officer Tran looked at the ceiling and gave me the time. Auburn Ravine Credit Union, presented with a DOJ print comparison, a police report, and 2 criminal complaints, released released its lien as to my interest, and went after Ryan personally for the full $120. The notice of default was rescinded on August 28th, 87 days after it recorded. 3 to spare. I know because I ran the profile that morning and sat at my desk and looked at the word rescission for a long time. The house sold in September for $812,000. By order of the court, the first $85,000 came to me, off the top before a single dollar was split. Family Code 2640, my mother's money. The credit union took most of Ryan's half, and the fiduciary finding took a good part of what was left. Vanessa took a plea in November. Felony identity theft and forgery, 3 years probation, 120 days in county, restitution, and her testimony. Ryan took his the week before trial. 2 felonies, 270 days in county jail, 5 years of probation, and a restitution order to the credit union that he will, as far as I can tell, be paying off for the better part of a decade on whatever a former real estate agent with a forgery conviction can earn. The judgment of dissolution was entered on February 3rd. I didn't go to the hearing. Patricia said I didn't need to, and I'd decided I had been in enough rooms with Ryan Harlan for one lifetime. I'd like to say it felt like winning. It felt like what it was. The record corrected. A chain of title with a bad link cut out and the good links closed back up. It's what I do for other people every day, and I'd never understood until that year how little it feels like triumph and how much it feels like finally being allowed to sleep. It's been 10 months since Dana's party. I have a 2-bedroom condo in Rockland, 11 minutes from Jenna, with a closet that is exactly as full as I want it to be. I still run the property profile on Juniper Court sometimes. A family named Oduya owns it now. 3 kids. I hope the backyard is as good as Ryan said it was. Dana and I are fine. She sent me a photo of the gift table from that night with the silver bow and a text that said, "Best present I got. I have never had a better friend, and I've told her so." Marcus retired in March. He gave me his glasses as a joke. I keep them on my desk. The letter is in a box in Jenna's garage with the rest of the file. I haven't read it since the photograph on Patricia's screen, and I don't intend to. I know what it says. He swore on my mother. And in the end, he kept exactly one promise in that letter, though not one he meant to keep. Everything he took from us, he gave back. The court just had to help him with it. My father turned 75 in April. We had dinner at the place in Auburn Mom used to like, the one with the fireplace. I wore the dress. Dad didn't say anything when I came in. He stood up from the table, which at his age takes a minute, and he looked at the pearl buttons, and then he sat back down and needed a second with his napkin. Mom told me to wear it when I needed to remember how loved I was. I wear it now with nothing in the pocket. It turns out that's the only way it ever worked.